Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Lioness for Truth, where one video at a time I bring forth hidden historical documents and ancient artifacts to restore the stolen yet rich history of the not-so-African African-American. So if you have a television, a phone, a laptop, or attended the public school system, you probably believe that everyone that ever did anything in history was white, and that the only history that black people have is slavery. Well, that's exactly what they want you to believe, and that's exactly why the false fictional version of history that is taught in a public school system and on the History Channel was created, to push that white supremacist narrative that is entirely false and not based off of actual history, but like I said, is nothing more than a fable. Because when you get into the actual historical sources, historical evidence, historical proof, artifacts, genetics, and things like that, everybody that they tell us was white was actually black. There has been a great switcheroo where they have hijacked history of the people now falsely called African American, whitewash all of those historical figures, and now say that those people were white. But like I said, when you begin to read and do digging and start to look for proof and evidence and firsthand accounts of these people, of these historical figures from the time when they were alive, what you will find is that all of them were not described as white, but they were described as being people that would now be called black or Negroes or African American. And today I wanted to go over two primary historical sources describing two 18th century French royals who were also described as being black men. But if you pay attention to the public school system or the History Channel, which should be called the Historical Fiction Channel, you will believe blindly and without proof or evidence that these people were white. And in fact, according to genetics, artifacts, and historical documentation, all of these people were black Negroes or Negroid. Let's start with this primary source. This is from 1755, and it's called Observations Concerning the Increase of Mankind by Benjamin Franklin. And we're going to see how in 1755, Benjamin Franklin described the people of Europe, the inhabitants of Europe, as being a black or Negroid people. Which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionably very small. All Africa is black or tawny, Asia chiefly tawny, America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. Let's read that again. 1755. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. So Benjamin Franklin in 1755 is saying that all of these European nations are filled with a swarthy complexion people. Let's get the definition of swarthy. Here we are in an 1828 Webster's Dictionary. Let's get the definition of swarthy to see what complexion Benjamin Franklin is describing these Europeans as having. Swarthy, dark of complexion, black, dusky, or tawny. As we can see at the top of the screen, swarth means black, darkly brown or tawny, darkly brown. Darkly brown. Does darkly brown describe white people? Do those adjectives describe a Caucasian or a white person? Is a white person darkly brown? Do they have darkly brown skin? Swarthy means dark of complexion or black. Swarth means black or darkly brown. So in 1755, Benjamin Franklin is saying that these Europeans have a darkly brown, black complexion, that they are dark of complexion or dark-skinned. Now let's get the definition of complexion, because one of the lies that the Caucasian wants you to believe is that complexion means hair color, or that complexion is describing the color of one's hair, in an attempt to invalidate these historical accounts describing all of these people as black that they told us were white, by saying that complexion means hair color and that all of these people are being described as white people with black hair, or white people with brown hair, when it says things like black and brown complexion. But let's get the real definition of complexion. Complexion, the color of the skin, particularly of the face, the color of the external parts of a body or thing, as a fair complexion, a dark complexion, or the complexion of the sky. Complexion, by definition, according to the English dictionary, is describing the color of your skin. Your skin. Your skin, not your hair. So if I say you have a black complexion, I'm saying that you have black, dark, swarthy skin. If I say you have a pale complexion, I'm saying that you have a pale, fair, light-skinned complexion, not hair. Complexion means skin. So here we are in a British magazine from 1802. It's called the Monthly Magazine or British Register, and it is from 1802. And we're going to see how Louis XIV was described. Now, these are primary sources, not the hearsay and assumptions of the History Channel and the public school system, where they pull out no proof or no evidence. They just show you a fake whitewashed image and sell you a narrative. Here we're dealing with proof and historical accounts from the time period. Several of their bodies were very well preserved, particularly that of Louis XIII. Louis XIV was also in good preservation, but his skin was black as ink. Black as ink. Black as ink. It's saying that Louis XIV's skin was so dark, so swarthy, he was likened unto being the color of ink. This is Louis XIV, the King of France, or the former King of France, whose skin, whose complexion is being described as black as ink. He was a very dark-skinned, very swarthy, melanated black man. And in 1755, what did Benjamin Franklin say? That the French are swarthy, are black, are darkly brown, are of a dark complexion, are dark-skinned. So we see this newspaper in 1802 saying that Louis XIV, his skin, his complexion is as black as ink. So who is this white man in these images they show us that are supposed to be of Louis XIV? They're fake. They're fictional. These are not depictions. These are not historically accurate depictions of these historical figures as they actually looked. And the original real depictions, the original real paintings of these historical figures do exist. They are owned by the elites of this world who have the original artifacts and the original paintings and the original history books about these people, showing and describing them as being black. But they'll never see the light of day because they need the rest of us to think that all of these people were white to keep the so-called or falsely called African American in a slave mentality, so that you would never think that you descend from the black man that was the King of France, whose skin was as black as ink. Here we're in another book called The Annual Register, or a view of the history, politics, and literature for the year 1744. Primary source, first-hand account. In 1755, Benjamin Franklin said that the French are of a swarthy, dark brown, black complexion. So in 1774, let's see how this book describes Louis XV, King of France. Louis XV was the handsomest youth in France. He had a swarthy complexion. Swarthy complexion. What does swarthy mean? Let's review. Swarthy, dark of complexion. Black, dusky or tawny. What is swarth? Black or darkly brown. So Louis XV has a darkly brown, black, dark, swarthy skin color. He's not pale. He's not fair. He's not light. He's not white. He is not. He does not look like these fake whitewash paintings that we have been told are depictions of him. That is a completely fictional, made-up face, a completely fictional, made-up man in those paintings. That is not the face or the appearance of Louis XV, King of France. We've already gone over the definition of swarthy. Darkly brown, dark of complexion, dark skin. So Louis XV, in this primary source, was the handsomest youth in France. He had a swarthy complexion. He had swarthy skin, dark brown, melanated, black skin, a dark brown, melanated complexion, a black man. Louis XV had a swarthy, dark brown, melanated complexion. And this is not fantasy and assumption and hearsay like we have been listening to that's got us believing that all these people were white. You crack open one book and you see all these people described as black that they told us were white. Louis XIV had skin as black as ink. He was a dark-skinned, swarthy, melanated black man. And Louis XV was the handsomest youth in France with a dark brown, swarthy, melanated complexion. This is the true history and the real ancestors of the people now falsely called African American.